Welcome to the recorded lecture, Scope of Practice, Chapter 1, from the Solomon and O'Brien Pediatric Skills for Occupational Therapy Assistants, 5th edition textbook. The resources for this lecture are the Solomon and O'Brien textbook, the Occupational Therapy Practice Framework, the OTPF4. The textbook reflects the 3rd edition, and I've updated in the lecture to the 4th edition. And I've also referenced the American Occupational Therapy Association website. The information in this chapter is foundational and also should serve as a review of information you've had from other coursework. And what you should learn in this recorded lecture is you should be aware of Vision 2025, which is the mission and vision of the American Occupational Therapy Association. You should understand the OTPF4, or the Occupational Therapy Practice Framework. I do want you to be mindful that Chapter 1 in the textbook reflects the older edition of the practice framework, the 3rd edition, but I have updated this lecture to reflect the 4th edition. As an occupational therapy assistant, you should understand your role in pediatric practice, supervision, and what it means to be service competent. And you should always, in any area of practice, incorporate the Code of Ethics. As with any area of practice in occupational therapy, we are impacted by federal legislation. And there has been lots of federal laws that have expanded services for practitioners to work in pediatrics. And right now, per the textbook, 18% of OT practitioners are working in pediatric settings. And for COTAs, I haven't done a recent search, but this is one of the primary areas that a lot of COTAs work in, this area and skilled nursing facilities. So we are going to explore this at another time, but the types of settings that we can provide pediatric OT services include schools, hospitals, homes, daycare centers, and outpatient clinics. ACOTE, the Accreditation Council for Occupational Therapy, provides standards for educational programs to prepare you students to be effective occupational therapy practitioners. And some of the areas, or the areas that they say that students should have a good understanding of in pediatric practice, include human development, or as I have on the slide, normal development. And when we work with children with disabilities or who have atypical development patterns, we need to have a strong foundation of normal development and the expected range of performance so that we can understand the child and design effective interventions. We cannot underestimate the power of the family. They are central to the child's well being, and we need to understand family dynamics as it relates to the therapeutic process. Having a good understanding of pediatric diagnosis is important, so we have foundational knowledge of prognosis, of what the prognosis is for the child, any precautions that might be involved, and understanding medical interventions as well as guidelines for working with children with different pediatric diagnoses. We always need a knowledge of not only our practice framework, but we need to understand models of intervention like MOHO, or frames of reference such as motor control and motor learning or sensory integration when we're working in pediatrics. It's assess. It's essential we understand appropriate assessment tools. So tools that are designed to identify level of performance in different performance areas, such as visual, perceptual, or motor. Um, so you'll be introduced to lots of different pediatric assessment tools in this class. As always, we are client centered and our interventions need to be age appropriate activities. We have to have an understanding of the different areas that we can provide intervention in. On the earlier slide, I pointed out that we can work in hospitals, we can work in schools, we can work in outpatient, we can work at home. And each of these areas have different service delivery models and expectations. Again, these are determined by the federal laws, how systems provides care. And at the end of the semester, we're going to look at assistive technology. And assistive technology is dynamic, it's always changing. As I'm talking to you today, at the beginning of the semester, I'm most certain to say that there will be new technologies developed in this short amount of time. So, in our textbook, which was published in 2021, there have been advances in assistive technology, but we will look at foundational assistive tech. Vision 2025 is AOTA's mission and vision statement. And it says that you can read here as an inclusive profession, occupational therapy maximizes health, well being, and quality of life for all people, populations, and communities through effective solutions that facilitate participation in everyday living. And they've broken this vision down into different pillars. And I went to the AOTA website and I have the link here, and it's also posted in the course space if you want to go and learn more about Vision 2025. But the pillars are effective. And if this were live and you were to click on this, it would bring you to this image with this statement that occupational therapy is evidence based, client centered, and cost effective. One of the things that we are going to discuss to ensure that we are evidence based practitioners are clinical practice guidelines. And we'll learn about those in lecture in our lab content, in our face to face time. If you go to the web page and you clicked on leaders, what you would see is occupational therapy is influential in changing policies, environments, and complex systems. So, as leaders, we have an important role, or as practitioners, we have an important role, and that is to be leaders. We also want to be collaborative. Occupational therapy excels in working with clients and within systems to produce effective outcomes. The other area that we are collaborative is intra professionally, and that is between OTs and OTAs. And in our course, we will be doing some intra professional collaboration as well. In Vision 2025, it states that we are accessible, that OTs provide culturally and responsive and customized services. That's no surprise to us, right? We are client centered. And we highlight that in equity, inclusion, and diversity, we are intentionally inclusive and equitable and embrace diversity in all its forms. So, this is Vision 2025. This is in our scope of practice. If you want to know more, go visit the website. This is foundational, not just to pediatric practice, but to all OT practice. The Occupational Therapy Practice Framework is our guiding document. This is what tells us where we work and what we do. So, legislation opens the door for areas for us to provide intervention. But this, the practice framework, defines what we do. And you're going to see when we talk about the framework, we say domain and practice. And here, I love this illustration, and it's right from the practice framework. And you have a copy that was given to you in OTA 111. As an AOTA member, you can go to the website and download a copy of the framework, or you can purchase it through the AOTA store. So it tells us what our domain is. Our domain is the areas we look at. We look at occupations, we look at context, we look at performance patterns, performance skills, and client factors. This is our domain. The process is how we provide services. So through evaluation, through intervention, and we are always looking for outcomes. So, what is it we do as occupational therapy practitioners? Here is the heart. We achieve health, well being, and participation in life through engagement in occupation. Your textbook was sharing information from the OTPF3. We currently are practicing in the OTPF4, so I have chosen to include information directly from the framework document, and this is directly from the OTPF4. And it tells us the domain, which I highlighted on the other slide, are occupations, context, performance patterns, performance skills, and client factors. Remember, we're a dynamic profession, and that means we're changing. We're always changing to meet the needs of the times. And what is different from your textbook and the new practice framework are the context. So I brought in this slide. So, occupations, you should be able to say these with your eyes closed: ADLs, IADLs, health management, rest and sleep, education, work, play, leisure, and social participation. Those are the areas that we assess performance in. The environmental contexts, or the context include the environmental factors and personal factors. And I'm going to briefly share what the environmental factors and personal factors include, but if you want more information on this, I suggest you go to the AOTA website to find out more, or pick up your practice framework document that you were provided in OTA 111. Turn to page 36, which is table 4, and it really does a nice job of explaining the context. I'm smiling because I said it does a nice job. Well, it is. It is our guiding document, so it should do a nice job. Context is the broad construct that encompasses environmental factors and personal factors. Environmental factors are aspects of the physical, social, and attitudinal surroundings in which people live and conduct their lives. So, in the environmental factors, they include things like the physical geography, the population, flora and fauna, the climate, natural events, human caused events, the light, the intensity and quality, how it can impact our engagement in occupation, right? Time related changes, sound and vibration, air quality. And it includes products and technology, so food and drug, general products and technology for personal use, mobility, personal indoor and outdoor mobility, and transportation equipment, not mobility, but the equipment that might be used, communication, activities involving sending and receiving information, Education, the processes and methods for acquiring knowledge and skill. Employment, cultural and recreational activities, practice of religion and spirituality, indoor and outdoor human environments. The list is very lengthy. Um, Support and relationships for people. So, again, we're still under environmental factors here. Immediate and extended family, friends, people in authority, personal care providers, even domesticated animals are considered in the environmental factors. Attitudes, so observable evidence of customs, practices, ideologies, values, norms, factual beliefs, religious beliefs that are held by the client and other people who work with the client. Service systems and policies. These are all environmental factors which are going to impact an ability of an individual to engage in their occupations. I'm turning the page because on page 40 is where they start to list the personal factors. I, for clarity, am not going to be testing you on these areas, but this is foundational. You should have an idea of what environmental factors are, what are personal factors. When we look at the personal factors, they're the age, the sexual orientation, gender identity, race and ethnicity, cultural identification and attitudes, social background, social status, socioeconomic status, upbringing and life experiences, habits and past current behavioral patterns, um, individual psychological assets, temperament, character traits, coping styles, um, education. So, what level of education, profession, and professional identity. So, how does an individual identify in their profession? Lifestyle and other health conditions and fitness. Let's see if there's more on page. And that's it. So, if you want to learn more about these, I'm going to write it right here between pages 36 and 40. Sorry, this is the best I can do right now. In the OTPF 4, Table 4 outlines these specifically. Am I going to quiz you? Am I going to test you on these specifically? No. Should you understand and have a foundation of these? Yes. Performance patterns. If you want to understand a little bit more about performance patterns, that is on page 41. And again, this is beyond the scope of this class, but it's a foundation. So 41 and 42 are the performance patterns. And if you want to look at performance skills, we will be breaking these down in our lectures because it looks at motor skills, process skills, and social interaction skills. And this is starts on page 43 of the OTPF4. And then client factors. I'm just turning through my book right now. Client factors starts on page 51. So if you feel that you don't have a good understanding of the OTPF4, it's a good idea to take the time to refresh your thinking on what are occupations, what are the context, what are the performance patterns, what are the performance skills, and what are the client factors. So again, in the domain of OT practice, we look at occupation. And can you remember from the former slide what the occupations were? Ooh, I'm not going to test you on this, but I definitely hope you can pull up what the occupations are in our domain of practice. All right, I'll tell you. They're ADLs, IADLs, health management, rest and sleep, education, work, play, leisure, and social participation. And occupation is a means and an end. That means it's a way to learn, and sometimes it can be a goal of therapy. And occupations include activities of everyday life. They are very dependent upon or influenced by an individual's culture and their values and beliefs. Occupations provide identity and meaning. And if you want to know more about occupations, please take the time to visit the AOTA webpage here at this link. This link is live in the PowerPoint, probably in your printer friendly version, but not in this PDF version because it's recorded in VoiceThread. But you can type it into your URL. And it's also posted in the course space. So, in a domain of practice, occupations, they're what we do. The OTPF4, or the practice framework, or the framework as AOTA likes it to be referred to as, outlines our domain, which we just talked about at length on the last few slides, and our process. And the process includes evaluation, intervention, and outcomes. So, how well did we do? So, remember, this process is dynamic and it's ongoing. Um, the evaluation is helps us understand the client's problems, their occupational history, some patterns and assets. It includes referral, screening, and evaluation. This is when an occupational profile is done. In the evaluation, we often use assessment tools to identify levels of performance. The evaluation then kicks out the intervention plan, and the intervention plan includes planning and the implementation of it, so the intervention and review. And what's in the intervention plan? Well, that's where we have our short term and long term goals and the services. So remember, we can provide services in different areas in pediatric practice. They could be school based, hospital based, outpatient based, home based, daycares. Um, there's a variety of settings that we could work in, and our intervention plan reflects the setting we work in. So if we're working in a school, it's going to be different than if we're working in an outpatient setting. And if we're working in a hospital, it's going to be different, an acute hospital, than an outpatient setting. So we need to always remember that the evaluation determines what the intervention is going to be. The intervention is going to be designed based on, I don't want to misspeak here. The intervention correlates with the setting and where the services are provided. And through the intervention, we can determine outcomes. And that is how well are the goals achieved. And at this outcome, we're going to then decide, do we need to reassess and go back to the beginning? Do we discharge this individual because they've met all their goals and there's no further need for OT services? Or are we going to discontinue services because the individual has plateaued or is not making progress or doesn't want to participate anymore? So, again, the OT process, this is not something specific to pediatrics, it's specific to our practice, and you should have a good foundational understanding of this. If you want to know more, please visit the link provided here. Whoops, I can't make an arrow. There we go. Please visit the link provided here. It's also posted in the course space. Throughout this course, we are going to expand upon the roles of the registered therapist and the certified occupational therapy assistant, so the OTR and the COTA. Nutshell, bottom line thinking. The OTR is responsible for all aspects of the OT process. Oh, OT process. What the heck is the OT process? Oh yeah, it's dynamic, it's ongoing, it's the evaluation, it's the intervention, it's the outcome. Oh yeah, I got this. So the OTR is responsible for all of those, and they're going to supervise the COTA throughout the OT process. The COTA is going to assist in assessment as requested by the OTR. They're going to provide intervention and maybe even be involved in the reassessment and the discussion of discharge and discontinuation of services. So, throughout the OT process, the OTR will supervise the COTA, and the COTA can contribute to the entire OT process. Again, we'll expand as we move through the sections of the text. Remember, there are specific qualifications for an OTA to practice, and they are provided through ACOTE, the Accreditation Council for Occupational Therapy Education, and an OTA student must successfully complete the certification examination administered by the NBCOT. And after, so first you're educated, then you pass the boards, yay! And then you become licensed by the state. So the NBCOT gives you the C, so you can be a COTA. And let's do a round of applause here for COTA. Yay! That's after you pass your boards, you get certified. And then you become licensed by the state. And then you practice. Woohoo! So once you graduate, you're certified and licensed, you will be able to practice. And there are different levels of experience. And the textbook defines these for you. That entry level is a new graduate or an individual new to a practice setting. So when you complete your level 2 fieldwork, the FEPWE, which is the performance evaluation, assesses to make sure that you are at entry level. The intermediate level is a higher level of skills gained by experience, continuing education, and involvement in professional activities. And finally, after a few years or years of practice, and if you stay in one practice area, you're going to become more advanced in that practice area versus, oh, I worked in a SNF, I worked in PD, I worked in mental health, and kind of bounce around. You're not going to become an advanced level until you have specialized skills in that area with expertise in that particular area of practice. I recognize that the text on this slide is a little bit small. You can expand your view, I think, in VoiceThread to full size tab if you need to see it large. Again, this is information that has been provided to you in OTA 111, supervision requirements, and I've brought in the supervision requirements right from the AOTA website. So here, if you click on this link, you can visit this page. There are different types of supervision, and supervision in general is that in all states, an OTA or a COTA must be supervised by an occupational therapy practitioner, an occupational therapist. Sorry, I misspoke there. The supervision process is definitely collaborative, and that is that you work together to ensure that supervision is um, meeting the needs of the occupational therapy assistant, but collaborative in that you have a voice. You need to speak out. You need to, if you're not getting what you need to say so. You need to develop this relationship. It's a wonderful process, and it's a wonderful experience. Supervision should be determined by factors like the practice setting, the number of clients, the complexity of the person or the clients you are treating, state requirements. So, what's the law of the state? Medicare requirements come in here for the supervisory process, and your service competency, your abilities. AOTA puts out a document, guidelines for supervision, roles, and responsibilities during the delivery of occupational therapy services. I have posted this for you as a resource in the course space. And the text provides that there are different levels of supervision, and close supervision is direct and daily. Routine supervision is direct and regularly scheduled. General is indirect as needed, and direct once each month or is assigned by the state law. And minimum is direct and indirect as needed or as mandated by a state regulatory board. So, am I going to test you on, do you need to memorize these levels of supervision? Not for this course, you do not. Do you need to be mindful for your practice and when reading case studies, what it might mean? Yes. But is there going to be a quiz on supervision levels? No. Is there a resource if you want to know more? Definitely. It's posted in the course space. Service competency is huge, and it's defined as two people performing the same or equivalent procedure that you'll obtain the same or equivalent results. So that means if I'm going to provide an intervention, well, let's be a basic passive range of motion, and I'm going to be able to move the individual through a certain degree of movement. And you are the OTA or the COTA who's working under my direction and license, and you're providing intervention to this child with CP who needs passive range of motion, it's the expectation that your passive range of motion is equivalent to my passive range of motion so that we would get the same results. And you can understand why we need to be service competent. So, how do we become service competent? How is an OT assistant deemed service competent? Well, sometimes it's through videotaping, watching sessions together. Of course, if you're going to videotape a client, we need to get release forms signed that the client is in agreement that they can be filmed. It could be through co-treatment, so an OT and an OTA co-treat during a session, or it could be the OT is observing the COTA, providing the treatment to establish service competency. Once it's established, the OTA can perform that intervention or an assessment without close supervision from the registered therapist. AOTA provides this document, the AOTA 2020 Occupational Therapy Code of Ethics. You are familiar with this document from OTA 111. I have posted it in the course space for your review. Am I going to test you on what are the ethical principles? Not in this class. Should you know the ethical principles? Yes, you should. And they are beneficence. And I'm not going to go into great detail explaining these because I know you have an understanding of this. So, again, let me start. Beneficence, non maleficence, autonomy and confidentiality, justice, procedural justice, veracity, and fidelity. Something near and dear to my heart is scholarship in occupational therapy. And our mission of Bristol Community College is to be a lifelong learner. And in our profession, we must be competent with the provision of services. And scholarship, believe it or not, is a form of leadership that provides us the ability to grow our knowledge, to expand, and to maintain our competence. And scholarship also involves dissemination of findings, which we share that information. And we can do that through conference presentations, poster presentations, publications, journal club discussions, in service trainings, and even informal networking, attending professional meetings. And in quite a while ago, I think it was the late 90s, this levels or types of scholarship were defined by Boyer, and they are the scholarship of discovery, which contributes to the development and creation of new knowledge, and it's expands our evidence-based practice options. And the textbooks gives the example of searching the literature to review various intervention methods is a form of this discovery of scholarship, or the scholarship of discovery. The scholarship of integration involves interpreting and synthesizing research findings to identify linkages across disciplines. So, exploring interventions used in PT and speech or education and relating those to occupational therapy is a form of integration scholarship. The scholarship of application is when we provide or connect or apply our professional knowledge to our interventions and to assess our outcomes. So, on the slide, I have applies findings generated through the scholarship of integration and discovery to solve real problems in the professions, industry, government, and community. So, we're applying what we've discovered and integrated. And the scholarship of teaching and learning is when we learn to teach others about how the I got stuck here. Give me a second. Okay, I'm just going to read it from the text so I don't inappropriately speak. Teaching scholarship is used to determine how the client learns best. And as an educator, I'm involved in teaching practitioners how to learn best. A little side note, I'm currently involved in, through AOTA, mentoring program, and I am a mentee in this program. So I'm being mentored by others on the scholarship of teaching and learning. And I have a couple of research projects going involved in the scholarship of teaching and learning. Hopefully, I'll disseminate that knowledge at some point. So my hope is, as we get to this slide, much of this information is a review from earlier coursework, and you're pretty familiar with it. Could you describe AOTA's Vision 2025? Do you remember what those pillars are? And what does the OTPF define as the domain of practice? What were the domains? Remember that outer circle. What does the OTPF define as the occupational therapy process? What is the process? What's required in supervision? Do you need to be service competent, or what is service competent? How do I become service competent? And what are the principles of the AOTA Code of Ethics? Again, this is not specific to pediatrics, but it's definitely applied in our pediatric practice. It's foundational, right? These are the foundations. Here we are, the last slide, yay, and it's the takeaway. Well, what's your takeaway from this? That you already knew this information, and this was a good refresher. That AOTA Vision 2025 is intended to guide the profession, that the occupational therapy framework helps define the domain and the OT process, that before you do anything in intervention or in practice, that you are service competent, that you understand supervision is collaborative and based on client level of need and practitioner's ability, that all OT practitioners must follow the code of ethics, and that scholarship is an integral part of practicing in occupational therapy. And I'm going to bring it back here. What's the domain? What's the process? I hope you can answer that right now. Thanks for listening, and I hope this was foundational information to you. Have a good day.